Welcome, everyone. If you're the kind of person who loves understanding exactly how the world works, well, you are absolutely in the right place for today's explainer. We're going to look at a man who essentially invented our modern scientific understanding of nature, a forgotten genius who took a completely fragmented, chaotic view of the planet and united it into the breathtaking, interconnected web we recognize today. His name is Alexander von Humboldt, and he is the architect of the interconnected world.
Okay, let's dive into this. Who actually invented our modern understanding of nature? I mean, really think about it for a second. When you hear the word ecosystem, or when you think about how a rainforest somewhere impacts global rainfall everywhere else, where did that holistic concept actually come from? Long before we had satellites, or supercomputers, or honestly even the word ecology, one man saw the matrix of nature.
Section 1. The Architect of Modern Geography.
So Humboldt wasn't exactly born in a jungle. He was a wealthy Prussian kid, born in Berlin back in 1769. But he had this intense childhood obsession with collecting bugs and rocks and plants that actually earned him the family nickname the Little Apothecary. Now before him, geography was a largely descriptive, frankly kind of boring task of just naming places, drawing borders, and listing out kingdoms. But Humboldt? He single-handedly transformed it into a dynamic, quantitative science, one driven by observation, measurement, experimentation, and interconnected analysis. He took geography from a simple map-making exercise and turned it into the study of a living, breathing planet.
Section 2. The Great Latin American Expedition.
In his 20s, Humboldt did something wild. He walked away from a very comfortable, highly respected job as a government mining inspector. He packed up a bunch of incredibly expensive scientific instruments and just headed straight for the dangerous, unexplored tropics. His 1799 journey to Latin America with French botanist Aimé Bonpland was the epic, inciting incident that completely rewired human science. It kicked off a lifelong thirst for exploration that would eventually take him all the way across Siberia decades later in 1829.
I mean, this wasn't some luxury cruise we're talking about here. It was pure, gritty jungle survival. They paddled through completely uncharted waters, proving for the very first time that the massive Amazon and Orinoco river systems actually connect. And through relentless insects, tropical diseases, and just sweltering heat, Humboldt never stopped measuring. Just imagine fighting off malaria while stubbornly making sure your humidity readings are absolutely accurate. He also meticulously recorded indigenous cultures, deeply respecting their environmental knowledge. And all of this was driven by his core belief that nature absolutely must be measured scientifically.
But you know, the jungle just wasn't enough for him. Humboldt then tackled Mount Chimborazo down in the Andes, which at the time people believed to be the highest mountain on Earth. I really want you to picture this. He is climbing to an absolutely extraordinary, freezing altitude in dangerously thin air, and he's doing it in the early 1800s. No oxygen tanks, no Gore-Tex, no modern climbing gear. Just heavy wool coats, bleeding boots, and a massive heavy barometer he absolutely refused to leave behind. It was a legendary, almost superhuman physical feat.
Section 3. Discovering the Unity of Nature.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate scientific climax of his life. That terrifying, freezing mountain climb up Chimborazo led directly to a massive realization. As Humboldt climbed, he noticed a distinct pattern. At the bottom, tropical forests. Higher up, temperate grasslands. Then alpine plants, and finally, snow and ice right at the peak. He realized in a flash of pure genius that altitude affects climate exactly the same way latitude does. As you climb a mountain, it's literally like walking from the equator to the North Pole. This is vertical zonation, and it's the absolute foundation of modern biogeography and ecology.
Everything in nature is interconnected. Now, today you hear that and think, yeah, obviously, basic common sense, right? But in the early 1800s? No way! This was a completely revolutionary paradigm shift. Scientists back then put plants in one box, rocks in another box, and weather in a completely different box. Well, Humboldt smashed those boxes. He argued that oceans, climate, mountains, and plants all continuously influence each other as one giant living system.
Section 4. Mapping the Global Climate.
Taking his wild epiphany from the slopes of a South American volcano, Humboldt scaled his vision up to the entire Earth. He needed to prove it mathematically for the globe, and to do so he literally invented the isotherm. You know when you open a weather app on your phone today and see those sweeping, color-coded lines showing temperature zones across a map? You are looking at Humboldt's invention. An isotherm connects places with equal temperature. This brilliant visual tool allowed scientists for the very first time to compare climates globally and actually see the hidden thermal bands wrapping around our planet.
History crowned him the father of physical geography for a very good reason. Before him, isolated science was the standard. You studied oceans or you studied plants, but never both together. Humboldt's framework completely unified these disciplines. He tracked how ocean currents cool the air, which in turn limits rainfall, which then dictates exactly what kind of plants can grow in the soil. He mapped the invisible, continuous interactions of the physical Earth.
And the milestones just kept coming. He discovered the massive cold ocean current off the west coast of South America, which still bears his name today, the Humboldt Current, and it's absolutely vital to marine ecosystems. He also organized the first international coordinated observations of Earth's magnetic field, pioneering geophysics. And he practically invented thematic mapping. The guy was just an absolute data-unifying machine.
Section 5. A visionary ahead of time.
Humboldt wasn't just organizing the science of his present day. His interconnected worldview made him a shocking prophet of the modern era we now call the Anthropocene. More than 200 years ago, Humboldt observed the devastation caused by colonial agriculture. He saw deforestation and soil erosion firsthand, and he realized something terrifying. Humans had the power to alter the climate. He warned that if we weren't careful, our actions could permanently damage ecosystems and literally change the weather itself. For a scientist in the early 1800s to foresee human-induced climate change, that is just staggering foresight.
And his holistic view of nature extended directly to his view of humanity. During an era that was completely dominated by imperialism and racial hierarchies, Humboldt opposed slavery entirely. He fought against colonial oppression and rejected racial discrimination outright. Just as he believed nature was a unified whole, he believed that all humans belonged to a unified family, sharing equal intellectual potential regardless of their race.
His ideas spread like wildfire. He wrote this beautifully poetic, multi-volume masterpiece called Cosmos that tried to explain the entire universe as one interconnected system. It was a massive bestseller, and it directly inspired a young biology student to get on a ship called the HMS Beagle and sail around the world. That student? Charles Darwin. Darwin himself wrote that without Humboldt's inspiration, he never would have made his famous voyage. Because of this massive influence, his name is literally stamped all over our physical reality. We have the Humboldt Current in the ocean, Humboldt University in Berlin, Humboldt National Park. There are towns, rivers, mountains, and forests named after him. There's even a feature on the moon bearing his name. He achieved a level of universal, global respect that is almost unmatched in the entire history of science.
So, why does a 19th century Prussian explorer actually matter to you and me today? Because every major environmental challenge we face right now, climate change, biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, requires Humboldt's philosophy to solve it. You simply cannot fix the climate without understanding the oceans, the forests, and human activity all at once. Modern Earth system science is exactly the interconnected framework that Alexander von Humboldt gifted to humanity.
If nature is a deeply interconnected web, what happens when we pull on one of the threads? Humboldt taught us that no piece of nature exists in isolation. Everything touches everything else. As we look at the world around us today, we have to ask ourselves, how hard are we pulling on those threads, and what will unravel next? Thanks for joining me on this Explainer. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.